Wednesday at 6:30 on Channel 5.
Oh, God.
You're watching Channel 5.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. We begin, of course, with the president's health. It's the other side of the international date line in Tokyo. The president is up and around. In fact, he's been speaking to the vice president, Dan Quayle, not too very long ago. He told the president he was indeed up and around, and in the president's words, feeling great. We may get some further news from the White House spokesman in the next few minutes. But it was quite a scare only 12 hours ago, 20 minutes past 8 in the evening, Tokyo time, the middle of yet another official dinner. Mr. Bush collapsed. Here's our White House correspondent, Britt Hume.
The president had looked tired and complained of jet lag on this trip, but in an interview late in the afternoon, he was in evident good spirits and said he was feeling fine.
Well, we're what now, sir? 10 days out. How are you feeling?
Physically good, mentally. I think we've had a very successful trip.
Less than 3 hours later, though, at a state dinner at the Prime Minister's residence, Mr. Bush was being frantically attended to after he threw up and slumped in his chair. Looking quite ill, he was stretched out on the floor by Secret Service agents with some help from his host, Prime Minister Miyazawa. The president was down for more than 2 minutes. Finally, though, he stood up under his own power, his face ashen, and tried, smiling a bit sheepishly, to assure the dinner guests that he was all right. Wearing a Secret Service agent's trench coat, he shook hands with Miyazawa and was escorted to his limousine, which took him back to the guest house where he is staying. Mrs. Bush stayed behind, addressed the dinner on his behalf, and tried to seem as unworried as possible.
I can't explain what happened to George because it never happened before, but I'm beginning to think it's the ambassador's fault. He and George played the Emperor and the Crown Prince in tennis today, and they were badly beaten.
About 45 minutes later, presidential spokesman Fitzwater appeared before reporters to say Mr. Bush had complained of feeling bad before the dinner. He was diagnosed by his doctor as having the flu, said Fitzwater, but insisted on going to the dinner anyway.
Dr. Lee reports tonight that the president has a case of gastroenteritis, commonly known as intestinal flu. The president was administered a dose of Tigan, T-I-G-A-N, to control nausea and has gone to bed.
Fitzwater said the president had been in what he called a faint condition, but did not lose consciousness at the dinner. He said Mr. Bush would skip the first part of his morning schedule, but would otherwise continue the trip as planned. At a minimum, this should force some change in the president's travel habits. He may like the breakneck pace, but his 67-year-old body seems not to. With an election year at hand, the president not only needs to keep his health from becoming a problem, he also needs to keep it from becoming an issue. Britt Hume, ABC News, Tokyo.
Well, the president was certainly susceptible to catching something. He has traveled 19,000 miles in 10 days, worked 16-hour days, official dinners every night, gone from tropical heat in Singapore to freezing cold in South Korea. Still, most people who do get intestinal flu don't have the kind of severe reaction that Mr. Bush had. So why does it happen, and is it serious? Here's our medical editor, Tim Johnson.
According to specialists, intestinal flu leading to collapse is possible but not common.
Those who have had intestinal flu, especially when there are upper gastric complaints, have experienced some wooziness and difficulty, particularly at a peak of nausea. But the extreme of collapse is unusual.
First, nerve signals from the stomach region to the brain stimulate the brain to slow down the heart and lower the blood pressure. The net result is less blood flow to the brain, which in turn causes lightheadedness and sometimes actual fainting. Second, tightening of the abdominal muscles during vomiting can squeeze abdominal blood vessels, further reducing blood flow to the brain. Collapsing is actually...
Tim Johnson, our medical editor, and we interrupt him briefly because Marlon Fitzwater, the president's spokesman, has shown up in Tokyo to brief reporters. Let's listen to what he has to say.
President Bush got a decent night's sleep last night. He woke at about 6:30 this morning. He's up and about at the Akasaka Palace. He still is suffering from some weakness related to the flu, but the major symptoms have subsided. All of the president's vital signs this morning are normal, as they were last night. There is no indication of any illness other than the common flu. No medication has been prescribed for today. I spoke with the president this morning. He is in good spirits. He's concerned about the inconvenience caused to dinner guests last night. He joked he might have a large dry cleaning bill to deal with. This morning, the president made a number of telephone calls. including Vice President Quayle, Chief of Staff Skinner, and members of his family. Dr. Burton Lee, the President's physician, reports that the President is in overall excellent health and should recover from this bout with the flu in a normal period of time. In fact, the President expects to resume much of his schedule here in Tokyo this afternoon. The revised schedule will be released by the press office soon. Secretary of Treasury Nicholas Brady will deliver the President's address to the Japanese Welcoming Committee. The President will have the one-on-one meeting with Prime Minister Miyazawa, and the joint press conference will be held at 3:30 this afternoon as scheduled. The President feels the trip is going very well and hopes that this episode will not detract from the overall focus of the visit. He thanks Prime Minister Miyazawa for his many courtesies last night and looks forward to the business meeting with him this afternoon.
The President's spokesman, Marlon Fitzwater, in Tokyo. Let's go briefly to our medical editor, Tim Johnson. Tim, anything you hear there that should cause any alarm to anybody?
It seems to confirm what they were saying this morning, and he seems to be back on track. Those pictures are obviously haunting and frightening, but that's the way flu strikes, quickly and then goes away quickly, and that appears to be what's happening.
Tim Johnson in Boston, thank you very much. The concern over the President's health has overshadowed the business side of the trip, the U.S.-Japanese trade negotiations specifically. The White House spokesman, Marlon Fitzwater, says they have been very intense. One of the issues is whether Japan will buy many more automobile parts from U.S. suppliers. Some American firms who make parts think the Japanese are freezing them out of the market. The Japanese say not true. It's a matter of quality, not discrimination. ABC's Chris Bury is in Decatur, Illinois.
Wagner Castings has been making transmission parts for Detroit for 60 years. So when Mitsubishi built a giant assembly plant 50 miles down the road, Wagner figured the Japanese automaker would also be a good customer for its parts. But Mitsubishi has not placed a single order.
We should be able to be competitive, and we produce the same product for domestic companies and have for decades.
And you can't get into Mitsubishi?
That's correct.
Mitsubishi and other Japanese automakers with plants in the U.S. import many of their parts from Japan. They also buy from more than 300 Japanese suppliers who have built their own factories here. At the heart of the trade trouble is a Japanese tradition of doing business with long-standing partners who are in on production from the very first moment of design.
American companies complain that it is difficult for them to join the club.
The few American companies that do crack the club often must meet tougher Japanese standards. Toyota liked the bumpers made at this Illinois factory, but Toyota agreed to buy only after dictating quality controls and instituting its own management system. Now, 95% of the bumpers made here end up on Japanese trucks.
There isn't some kind of an official policy not to buy American. I think all customers worldwide are open to a better product.
Japanese car makers have promised to buy more American parts, but they may not buy enough of them to make a difference.
Well, basically, these initiatives, at least announced, the ones I know of announced to date, amount to a lot of empty sushi.
The University of Michigan forecasts the trade gap in auto parts will grow, not shrink, that by 1994, 90,000 more American jobs will be lost in the parts industry alone. That as long as Americans buy Japanese cars, American suppliers cannot survive unless they find a way to sell to the Japanese. Chris Bury, ABC News, Decatur, Illinois.
The day's other news, including the American agenda, when we come back.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Brought to you by Just for Men Hair Coloring.
This was me with dull gray hair. I looked washed up. Then I found a whole new way to make my gray look great.
Introducing a new kind of shampoo from the makers of Just for Men Hair Care called Great Looking Gray. Great Looking Gray does more than clean and condition. It gets rid of the dullness, even yellow buildup, brings out the real silver.
What a difference it makes.
New Great Looking Gray shampoo, and for stubborn yellow, new Great Looking Gray anti-yellow treatment.
Do you have a cold?
Yes, I do. It feels like the ocean is in my head.
Here's 2 cold medicines. This relieves these 3 symptoms, this 9. Choose one.
9. I have all of those symptoms. Sinus pain, nasal congestion, and I have a scratchy throat.
Here's what you chose. Are you shocked?
Yeah, I am.
Would you try Dristan Cold? How do you feel?
The Dristan really worked. I feel better.
Dristan, the face of relief today.
In Russia today, Boris Yeltsin took his first trip outside Moscow to see firsthand how people are coping with the new price increases. In one food shop, an angry crowd let him know they are not happy, and his answer was, if we had only done this a few years ago, we would be living normally by now. We have a story about a food store in Russia tonight that has managed to get something of a head start in the transition to capitalism. ABC's Jim Hickey is in Moscow.
Tangerines, tea, 12 kinds of sausages. There is no other store in Moscow quite like the Novoarbatsky. Store president Leonid Semyonov says that is because he planned for a free market future. 3 months ago, when Semyonov got permission to experiment with capitalism, he was allowed for the first time to buy products wherever he could without government management.
What do you have today? Beef? Good, send it over.
Semyonov and his staff are aggressive and looking for products to put on the shelves. If we have only one kind of bread, he says, we call other factories to find different varieties. If there's no meat, I search until I find it. If what he orders fails to show up, Semyonov sends his own trucks out to get it. But to ensure delivery, he is establishing a personal relationship with his suppliers, inviting them, for example, to lunch in the store cafeteria. More importantly, he is able to guarantee his suppliers a regular outlet for a good price. That's because he is allowed to decide what he will charge his customers, though the government still limits him to a 25% profit. The prices, Semyonov explains, are based on what the market will bear. Customers complain because the prices are high, but costs are going up everywhere. At least these shelves are full. He believes others can accomplish what he has if they persevere through tough economic reforms. Semyonov has seen the future, and for him, it works. Jim Hickey, ABC News, Moscow.
We'll be back in just a moment.
Hello? Jill? Oh, how about dinner at our house? What's wrong? Headache. I can imagine. Oh, I've got what you need. Motrin IB. Works great on headaches. My doctor said it's the same medicine as in prescription Motrin, but in non-prescription strength. One Motrin IB works as well as 2 regular Tylenol. Here.
Oh, no.
Don't look. Just keep this. Sounds like they'll need it too.
Motrin IB, the relief of Motrin in non-prescription strength.
In recent years, doctors have discovered a flaw in eggs. They're extremely high in cholesterol, and a diet high in cholesterol and fat can contribute to the risk of heart disease. Nutritionists at Fleischmann's have found a way to overcome this flaw with Fleischmann's Egg Beaters, the only one that's 99% real egg with 0 cholesterol and 0 saturated fat. Next time you'd love an egg, crack open a carton. Fleischmann's Egg Beaters, the great tasting egg without a flaw.
Here's a sweet idea for breakfast.
Try Sunsweet prune juice for a change.
It's naturally sweet and delicious.
Sunsweet prune juice adds no sugar.
It's perfect just the way it is.
Remind you of anyone?
Not really.
If your doctor has recommended Metamucil and you like the results, but you don't like those glasses of thick liquid, change to FiberCon. Get the same fiber action in easy-to-swallow tablets. Get doctor-recommended FiberCon.
President Bush has apparently made up his mind on the future of the B-2 bomber. The president is now planning to recommend that only 20 B-2s, about 100 fewer than initially planned, be built. It would save billions of dollars, but it would cost a lot of jobs in Southern California, where Northrop manufactures the B-2. California politicians are likely to mount a determined resistance, but all over the country, some politician is mounting a determined resistance to defense cuts. Here's ABC's Cokie Roberts.
Groton, Connecticut has lived well off defense spending. In the good old days, General Dynamics Electric Boat Division was awarded up to 5 submarine contracts a year. This year's order is for 1 sub. That means layoffs at the shipyard and every place else.
A lot of people I knew in high school went to work at EB.
And now what?
Now they're in the unemployment line, a lot of people are.
If contracts for submarines continue to trickle in at 1 a year, 13,000 jobs may be lost. And without a Soviet naval threat keeping the assembly lines pumping, orders for submarines are likely to drop even further. In an effort to stave off a shutdown, the town's businesses launched a campaign to get people to write their representatives to keep Electric Boat alive.
Your friends, neighbors, clients, customers, and congressmen ask for your support before it's too late.
To understand where we are, in the '82 recession, Connecticut lost about 20,000 jobs. In this recession, we've already lost about 80,000 jobs.
Liberal Democrat Sam Gadenson supports defense cuts in other members' districts, but when it comes to his hometown, the congressman fights for military money.
That's what you've got to do. I mean, that's your job. You fight for what's yours, and hopefully the Congress as a whole will not support things that don't make military and economic sense.
They are in there fighting for the nation's defense by making sure that the product we're able to produce for the nation's defense comes from here, not other areas of the country.
In areas like this, it doesn't much matter whether the representatives are Democrats or Republicans, liberals or conservatives. Regardless of ideology, they'll push for more defense spending, at least in their districts. But keeping the military money flowing will be tough.
We're really dealing with a broad, very, very broad changes in U.S. policy. I mean, in the past, you didn't have the kind of fundamental questions that you have now.
Questions about whether to kill off weapon systems that once seemed invaluable, to close down bases that once seemed essential, to cut back defense spending to numbers that once seemed unthinkable, mean that the Congress will be waging the Pentagon funding wars on a different battlefield. And with much less money to spread around, there will be many more losers than winners. Cokie Roberts, ABC News, Groton, Connecticut.
On Wall Street today, the Dow Jones Industrials lost a fraction of a point to close at 3203. The trading was very heavy. When we come back, the American agenda.
To protect the lives of firefighters, DuPont developed a remarkable fire-resistant fiber for their clothing called Nomex. But perhaps even more remarkable is how it protects those who never even wear it. At DuPont, we make the things that make a difference.
Come on and nutricize your body. Come on.
I've been nutricized. I went from a size 12 to a size 6. Now you could do it too, for a lot less. Through tomorrow only, lose 10 pounds free. Start to nutricize your life. Lose 10 pounds free when you call right now. But don't wait. Call 1-800-321-THIN. This offer ends tomorrow.
When you're all stuffed up and use an ordinary nasal spray, it drips into your tissue where it can't help you breathe. But not Sinex Ultrafine Mist. Its medicine stays where you need it, so you can breathe the way you want to. We don't drip down, we clear up.
They're not doing anything. Where's the surprise? What? Do they whistle or turn purple or something? These are just flakes.
Now that's a surprise. They don't have to do anything. They just taste good. Simplicity. It's very tricky. I like that. What are you going to call them?
Kellogg's Corn Flakes.
Kellogg's Corn Flakes? Isn't that name taken?
Taste them again for the first time.
Imagine a rent-a-car company that offers special delivery right to your door. That's Enterprise.
Here, let me help you.
Enterprise, a special rent-a-car company that gives you special delivery.
On the American agenda tonight, protecting jobs and protecting an endangered species. In Oregon today, a federal committee called the God Squad locally, because it has the power to make such a choice, began a series of public hearings on the case of the spotted owl. Outside, hundreds of angry people who work in the timber industry demanding an end to the limits on logging designed to protect the owl's habitat. And a few demonstrators who want the government to keep the logging limits in place. The two sides have been fighting over the issue in and out of the courts for a number of years. It appears to have served as a lesson for another group of people who are trying to save another endangered species, but who don't believe the confrontational approach is the way to go about it. Our agenda reporter tonight is Barry Seraphin.
Redfish Lake in Idaho is named for a fish that has nearly disappeared, the Snake River sockeye salmon. Once, hundreds of thousands of the redfish swam 900 miles from the sea to spawn here. This year, only 4 made it home. And the National Marine Fisheries Service recently declared the Snake River sockeye an endangered species. The sockeye are a symptom of a massive decline of wild fish in the West from Southern California to Canada. Scientists say more than 200 fish populations are in jeopardy, half of them at high risk of extinction. Who is to blame?
The blame is us. We're living in the salmon ecosystem in such a way that the salmon no longer has a home.
Once, that ecosystem inspired songs.
From the Rocky Canyon where the Columbia River rolls, seen the salmon leaping, the rapids and the falls.
Then, beginning in the 1930s, the rivers changed. Dozens of dams went up on the Columbia River, the Snake River, and their tributaries.
To make 1,000,000 acres bloom anew.
The dams did make deserts bloom. They provided flood control. Their locks and reservoirs improved navigation and recreation benefits. Most of all, they have provided cheap, clean power to millions of people in the Pacific Northwest. But despite ladders installed to help salmon upstream and barges to carry them downstream, the dams have for decades been a deadly gauntlet for fish to run. Ted Halleck is chairman of a 4-state commission scrambling to save the fish.
Dams, the hydroelectric system, federally and privately owned in the Columbia and Snake Rivers, are killing anywhere from 57% up to 95% of the young fish that are trying to get downstream.
Hatcheries have been established to produce young fish to replace those that are lost. But hatchery fish take food and habitat away from wild fish, and they are more vulnerable to all of the dangers in the rivers.
Wild fish are surviving at least twice the rate of hatchery fish. So if we're going to have salmon at all, we're going to have to maintain the genetic resource that those wild populations represent.
Saving the wild fish will mean a clash of environmental and economic interests across an entire region. But no one wants another bitter fight like the one over the spotted owl. So states and environmentalists, utilities and industries are trying to work together. For example, they have agreed to increase the water flow over the dams and reduce the flow through the turbines. That would mean more expensive electricity.
Is that going to cause an increase in rates of 5 to 10%? Yes. Is that the right thing to do, given the challenge we face out here in the Northwest? The answer, in our opinion, is yes.
But saving the salmon could change more than the cost of electricity.
All of the people who depend on the river as a vital waterway and have depended for 50 years or 100 years on it are affected by this decision.
Workers at giant aluminum plants, which have thrived on cheap power, worry about their jobs. Farmers who depend on river reservoirs for irrigation worry too.
Without water, this ground is virtually useless.
Dams are not the only problem, so others worry. Loggers, because timber cutting would have to be curtailed along streams to protect fish habitat. Commercial fishermen, because their $50 million a year industry would also be restricted. And Indians, for whom fish are more than food.
I lived on salmon all my life, and I got along well, and I think it was my traditional religious food, just like a Bible is to a white man. That's just what it means to me.
Finding answers will mean something to everyone who lives here. For more than 100 populations of wild fish in the West, it is too late. They are already gone. Saving the rest will be a race against time, and it will not be easy. But all sides here are determined to come up with a recovery plan rather than leaving the fate of the once mighty fish, like the owl, to the courts or the federal government. Barry Seraphin, ABC News, Portland, Oregon.
Our final report this evening in just a moment.
Extra Strength Maalox Plus, the strongest antacid there is, now comes in extra strength tablets. Stronger than Tums, stronger than Rolaids. New Extra Strength Maalox Plus, now in tablets.
It's the strongest, and my stomach tells me it's fast.
Before I switched to Fixodent, Jones Peanut Crunchies only looked delicious.
Fixodent, and forget it. Fixodent is the strongest holding denture adhesive you can get. It even stands up to the hottest liquids. For the strongest hold, Fixodent, and forget it.
Doing it yourself can save you a lot of money if you get it right the first time. Make sure you do. Ask Ace.
An Ace 6-outlet surge suppressor is just $5.44, and 4-foot cool white fluorescents are just 79 cents each.
Ace Best Buy is another reason Ace is a place for you.
80% of nation on flu alert. Severe flu season underway. What will you do? Doctors recommend TheraFlu, hot liquid medicine that works fast. TheraFlu, strong therapy for flu symptoms.
There was a time when aerodynamic design and agile handling would have been unheard of in a car this roomy. A time when a V8 that's more powerful and more efficient would have been simply inconceivable. But that was then, and this is now. The new Ford Crown Victoria. Have you ever wished the traditional could become the exceptional? Have you driven a Ford lately?
Tonight on Nightline, live coverage as President Bush resumes his schedule in Tokyo following his collapse, and the latest as the crucial trade talks draw to a climax. Tonight.
Finally, here this evening, we return to President Bush's Japan visit. We are reminded once again today how quickly and compassionately the whole nation responds when the president gets sick. It is also true that it very much overshadows, if only temporarily, considerable criticism of the way this trip has gone. Criticism at home and in Japan. In Japan, lately, criticism of Americans in general. ABC's Mark Litke is in Tokyo.
Disliking Americans is nothing new for angry Japanese rice farmers or radical students, but being anti-American, or kenbei, has recently become more fashionable among average Japanese, who are tired of being constantly criticized by the United States and blamed for America's economic problems.
There is a feeling that why should we be pushed around so much?
George Fields, a social commentator here who is half Japanese himself, believes it is growing worse, that Japanese are losing their respect for America.
They're more disconcerted about what they perceive as a display of weakness. And, you know, if a weak guy starts throwing his weight around, that becomes a bully.
Japan's mass media have been especially critical of the American president bringing corporate executives here. American high-handedness, they've called it, and an embarrassment.
I think a lot of people are irritated or maybe more feel some sort of pity toward an American president of a superpower coming here to Japan as just a salesman.
What bothers many Japanese most is that they believe they have changed dramatically under pressure from the West. Their society is more open, they are less insular, and there's no longer any shortage of foreign products in Japan. How much more can we do, they ask. We already eat your food, wear your clothes, buy your music, and speak your language.
All these changes are occurring, but all they hear is not enough, not enough, not enough.
While kenbei is a far cry from the virulent anti-American feelings in some countries, it is making an impact on younger Japanese, more outspoken and confident than their elders. The Japan that can say no is not only a bestseller, it may be the motto of a generation. And consider this. In the latest Godzilla movie drawing record audiences here, America is the enemy, and the Japanese cheer when their monster sends the Americans running for their lives. Mark Litke, ABC News, Tokyo.
That is our report on World News Tonight. I'm Peter Jennings. Have a nice evening. Good night.
TV Guide tells you why you shouldn't miss the return of Civil Wars. It's incredible. It's exactly the same formula he used in Hill Street Blues and L.A. Law. Good story, good writing, good casting, and good production values. I cared about the characters right away. Tonight at 10, 9 Central.
You say, what do you say? All my friends say I repeat things. I don't think I repeat things, but all my friends say I do. Like I come to Burger King for lunch, and I say, what can I get for $2 for lunch? And she says I can get 2 burgers and 2 fries for $2. I said 2 burgers and 2 fries for $2, and she says I just said that. I mean, Burger King is the only place to get flame broiled burgers cooked over a flame and fixed just the way I like it. I said, thank you very much. She said, I just said that. I'm really gonna enjoy this lunch. Really enjoy it.
Your way, right away at Burger King now.
Tonight, Fran's got her own talk show.
It's the mama.
What's your wife doing with a job?
Why don't you try letting your husband think he's won the argument? I know that's what I do with my husband.
Dinosaurs.
Then Kevin's on a quest for his driver's license.
I didn't want to brag, but as a driver, I had it all.
What happened?
He creamed it. This was no time to panic. Anybody could learn to parallel park.
Your turn, Bo Peep.
The Wonder Years.